She hasn't told us.
Telling you now. Right, ladies, good afternoon. How are we all?
Good, thank you. Good.
Fabulous.
Fine, thank you.
Right, so we'll do introductions. So we've got Kerry, who will be speaking about the authority gap. We've got Coco, who will be speaking about Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. And we've got Laura, who will be speaking about not being perfect, basically, that it's okay to be brave and not perfect. So I'm going to start with you, Kerry, if that's okay. And ladies are going to be staying with us to talk to us as well. Could I just ask Coco or Laura, could you just double check that we're streaming on the book club Twitter channel, if that's okay? Hopefully we will be.
Yeah.
Okay, but if not, I'm sure there'll be a way of sharing it afterwards. So, key messages, Kerry. So we are going to start talking about the authority gap. There's been quite a lot of talk about the book actually quite recently, with quite a lot of people coming in, some of them coming in at very different angles to, I suppose, maybe how we're interpreting the book. But could you just sort of briefly go over the key messages that you've come across by reading it?
Okay, so I heard Marianne Seagart talking about the book on a Radio 4 programme, and I really enjoyed her short presentation of the book, which then made me go and buy it and get it. And so basically, the book is it's the narrative of top women, super powerful women, expert, intelligent leaders in their field, who tell us about having their authority challenged, their views ignored, and their expertise questioned. And what Marianne Seagart is actually saying, and if these great, brilliant, expert, intelligent, amazing women are telling us this what's happened to them, then it's a pretty good indicator that the rest of womankind have to face that kind of questioning of themselves ongoing. And if women aren't taken as seriously as men, then they're going to be paid less, promoted less, and held back in their careers. So we've got these successful, powerful women who are occupying, really top jobs across business, economics, politics, you name it. And they were all talking about their lived experience of being silenced. It's so normalized in our society. It's our cultural template. And maybe we don't even notice. We don't even see it because it's everywhere. And what Marianne Seagart does in the book, she uses an amazing evidence base, her research to underpin the claims. And then in my notes, I've actually put the truths. That she draws upon such a diverse range of women's voices from across the globe, every facet of society, and it's a truly international phenomena. She does acknowledge the intersection of race, disability, and sexual identity, and how the authority gap is much worse for women of colour, women with a disability, etc. And I'm just going to sort of like my final comment about the theme of the book, the key messages. On page 69, she tells the story of Dawn Butler, Labour MP, a woman of colour, and another MP said to her as she got into the lift, "Oh, excuse me, cleaners are not allowed to use this lift."
There are no words there, really.
Yeah, I kept reading it, Kieran, and I kept thinking, no, this is not. Yeah, no words. Yeah, I was lost for words.
Yeah, It's interesting that you say about it being a cultural template. That's quite interesting because you can link that to systemic issues, can't you, that we're having to break down. But if it's not, because it sounds from what's been said that it's normalized, that it's there and it's normal. So how are you able to actually see it if it's normalized behavior and if it's a cultural template that you don't know any different? Does that question make sense?
It does. It does. And I think it's about just being ultra aware and being. How do you become aware of your unconscious bias or your implicit associations? By just checking yourself all the time, just continually checking yourself. And one of the things that really that I took away from this was about just being so much more aware and tuning myself in all the time. And I was thinking about a class I'm teaching currently at the university, which in one group I've got 2 males and about 20 females, and in the other group I've got 2 males, although one has been away for a couple of sessions. And I'm trying to include them, but I think actually what I'm doing is I'm giving them more airspace, more in my. And I'm just trying. I'm problematizing my own living. I'm problematizing what I'm doing all the time. Just being so much more acutely aware of my unconscious bias, my implicit association. As soon as I become, how can it be unconscious if I'm becoming aware of it? But those biases that are just so embedded into who I am.
That's interesting because it's almost like you've got less men, so therefore you're going to want to give them a bit more space to speak because there's less of them. But then in the other sense, unless men read something like this, are they actually going to be aware or even self-aware of the privilege that they have? Because the authority gap, it's basically more or less about, it starts off with gender, doesn't it, in the sense that there's the privilege there for men anyway. But if men don't read a book like this, is that gap ever really going to decrease? So how would you invite them into a space that actually they do need to be part of in order for us to make any change?
Talking about it, raising it, and not feeling uncomfortable about raising it. And when I raise it and I encounter defensiveness or any other negative responses, just stay in that space. And recognize that this is going to be hard work, challenging work, emotionally exhausting work, and it is wearing, but just live with it, stay with it, and be that change.
Interesting, because we touched on this before, didn't we, about that? So once you're aware of your privilege, it is uncomfortable because you mentioned that. You said when I'm aware of it, it does make me uncomfortable when someone challenges me. But it's interesting because it's down to your response then, isn't it? Because some people will be open to that challenge and accept it and own it and hopefully move forward with it. But then there will be people who are defensive because it does make them uncomfortable. So, and maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but aren't they the ones that we're going to have to make more of an effort with, because that's where the real change will probably happen?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, recognizing the privilege that we have, and even that, is now becoming very contested when we talk about white privilege. But okay, I have privilege, and owning my privilege, and being aware of my privilege. And again, I was talking to my students in a class, a module I'm teaching at the university, about some of the privilege or power that I bring into the teaching space. And I just invited them. I said, so what power have I got here? And somebody said, well, you mark our work. Yeah, I mark their work.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I remember when I first started teaching. I read by Jennifer Nias, and it was something that showed that a teacher can make or break. A teacher can make or break a child's life. And the power, the privilege that the privilege and the power that we have. And again, this morning, I was watching the early showing on the Sunday morning bit of the match of the day, the repeat on the Sunday morning, and Ian Wright was on there, and I just said to my husband, oh, when Ian Wright says he done, should he say he done or should he say he did? And then we had a conversation about accents and language and the power of language. And then I remembered at one of my first experiences at university, and I was first generation going to university. Nobody in my extended family had gone to university. And one of my university lecturers, I'd said something like, you was. And I'm not, this was like over 30 years ago. And he said, you was? You, as I remember it.
Mm.
And I sort of felt kind of so
small.
Yeah, and in the wrong place.
Judged,
I didn't belong there. And I sound like the Queen now.
So it's like it had a profound impact on you, though, in the sense that it rocked your identity in a way, didn't it? Because
Yeah, but it's about how we use our privilege. As teachers, what we say to a child, as a lecturer in a university, how I speak to my students, how I choose to use, I can't remember. I think it was Coco said that she was a coach. She was a certified coach, and I think about how in those spaces, the power that we bring into those spaces. I am really going somewhere with this. I think I'm still talking about the book. I am still.
You are, absolutely, yeah, because I think it's that authority and what it looks like in different spaces, but again, acknowledging that you have that authority in that space and how you're going to sort of disseminate it to others. Because it's about empowering, isn't it, more than anything? That's what we hope to do. But it's hard when there's things like status and authority, and it's hard.
But it's actually recognising the powers that we have, privileges that we have, opportunities that we have, and the responsibilities that we have as to how we choose to use them. And how we do feel if we are challenged. And we do feel uncomfortable, and it's not comfortable. It's not comfortable. But be comfortable with feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, took the words out of my mouth. Absolutely, exactly that. It is that. And I think that shows a higher level of responsibility as well, because you acknowledge it and therefore will do something about it. You've spoken about Dawn Butler's story, and everyone would find that one shocking. But were there any sort of quotes that really jumped out at you that you think actually you wouldn't laminate them, but you'd live by them, in the sense that they're going to be something that you'd probably go back and reflect on?
I'm not going to laminate this, and I'm not going to live by this. But I think this is something that I, at my level of leadership, and where I am in my career, I'm going to own my own identity as a leader. So on page 199, no, not 199, it was page 119, actually. Theresa May was asked to give advice to aspiring young women entering politics. And she replied, it's as written on page 119, behave like the men. Now, if authority, if in our implicit association, if we did an implicit association test and we saw authority and we see leader and we see male, then I can see where this is. I can see where this is going, and I'm not prepared to do that. And I've had lots of conversation, and I had a conversation with a very successful woman leader who's in the university leadership hierarchy, you know, like 2 rungs higher than me, and she might have said how I interpreted the advice that she gave to me was that I needed to play by the rules.
Whose rules?
Yeah, the golf club rules. And so it's like, this is me, not her. But I thought, well, what she was basically saying, Kerry, it's no good turning up to the golf club wearing your netball kit. So I've got to play by the golf club rules. But I think if I started to play by those golf club rules, that wouldn't really be who I wouldn't be true to myself.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to get into the golf club if I don't play by the golf club rules. And it's only when I'm in the golf club can I really bring about change.
Yeah, which is, that's interesting in itself, because you've almost, by getting into the golf club, you're going to have to have, what's the word? Compromised a little bit of yourself to get in there. And then how authentic are you going to be?
And then you might actually lose or forget who you really are. Or you might be accused of being duplicitous, not being authentic. These are really tricky words.
Mm-hmm.
But if I want to make change, I need to get to the top. But only way I can get to the top is to behave like a man. I've yeah. Oh, yeah. So so I'm kind of like, my head is going bing, 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 bing. Yeah, yeah. And so yeah. So yeah, and then sort of Mary Ann wrote on page 94, like, when we do behave like men, we face criticism. She was like, in her journalistic world, she wasn't going to be talked down. She was going to speak up, speak out, voice her opinions. And then she talked about how Private Eye did a caricature of her, and she was like Mary Ann Bighead. And so, which she then wrote, which should have been Mary Know Your Place. And it's how do you kind of navigate this space, this maze, this labyrinth of the leadership world? It's complex.
It is, definitely. But I think, I don't know about you, one thing Women Ed has taught me especially is that when certain things like that do happen, you name it, you sort of label it as what it is, and then at least you've got some sort of ground to work on then to move forward from it. Because it might be, I don't know about you, but I've always felt self-conscious going into leadership positions where I don't want to come across as big-headed, or I don't want to come across as arrogant. And it's something that I kept saying when I started my first leadership post. And it was a male head that I was working with. And he was like, why do you keep saying that? Like, you don't come across as arrogant. But I was like, so is that the narrative that I've been telling myself? So in some ways, do we need to acknowledge maybe we're just very self-conscious about how we might come across as well.
But I think that's what the book is really saying to me, or my reading of the book, that this authority gap is a cultural template. Even women who are at the absolute top of their profession are experiencing them being questioned, their expertise being challenged, and because the cultural template of leader is male. And yeah, we're here to challenge that, Kim, and we're here to change it, and we're going to call it out.
Mm-hmm.
And not feel uncomfortable with calling it out, because
it's a brave thing to do.
Yeah. And not be uncomfortable with calling it out, and not think it is our problem. I think that's what I took. That is something that I really took away. This isn't me being arrogant, me being self-deprecating, me being vulnerable. This isn't me. I can change. I can bring change.
Mm-hmm.
But this is something which is structural. This is something which is systemic. But it isn't about me being weak.
I think you're tackling the imposter syndrome there as well, actually, in many ways. That's why it is the way it is, isn't it? You've briefly touched on then what you've sort of learned about yourself, and you've been very reflective by the signs of it reading this book, definitely. What is it that you've learned about yourself that maybe you're going to share with others?
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I might be a little bit repetitive here, so I do apologise.
Don't apologise.
I don't need to feel less. We don't need to feel less if I experience this authority gap, this being challenged, this being questioned in my leadership life. I found it was kind of like really quite empowering. But I can challenge it, and I will challenge it. It's such a easy book to read. It's so it's so well written, and I don't want to say it was such an easy book to read. But what a book that Marianne Seagart references is Kate Mann's Down Girl, and Kate Mann is a feminist philosopher. And as a consequence of reading The Authority Gap, I went on to get Kate Mann's Down Girl, which is a much harder read. But as I say to my students, because it's a hard read doesn't make it that's good, because it's supposed to be challenging me. It's supposed to be making me think. It uses lots of language and words that I might not be immediately familiar with, but that's again good, great. That's not about me being weak or not very bright or not very intelligent. That's just absolutely fine. But I did really enjoy going on to read Kate Mann, and really started to unpack misogyny and patriarchy, and seeing how those two terms might sometimes be the fusion of them, and really starting to understand the spectrum of misogyny. And it made me go back on something that's happened about 5 years ago, when a male colleague who was my peer in terms of our leadership position in the organization He really did say this in a meeting. Kerry, can you be quiet now? I think we've heard enough of you.
I don't want to swear because that's probably what would happen.
I don't know why I didn't. I don't know why I. But you know what I did?
Oh, God.
I just thought, oh, maybe I've spoken too much. Maybe I've nattered on. You know the Liz Lockhead poem, Men Talk, Men Debate, Women Natter, Prattle, Rattle, Rattle. Men Talk.
Yeah.
And I thought, now, because of where I am in my own thinking, I thought, how dare he, and how did I not call that out?
Well, I think your train of thought that you've shared with us was why you didn't call it out, because you went back, you were made self-aware, but it was almost like, oh yeah, I must have been talking. So it's not a case of it's not normal to question at that point, was it really?
The living out of the authority gap. It was the living out of the authority gap.
Yeah.
But why did nobody else in the room? So I think it makes me look at these spaces that I encounter, any of the spaces that I encounter. As a trustee, I was encountering these spaces, and even looking at my wider family, my friends, and I'm scrutinizing constantly the spaces that I am in. So key learning from reading this book: feeling angry is okay. Feeling overwhelmed is okay. Feeling worn out is okay. And acknowledging this is hard work, but I'm up for it.
That's fabulous, Kerry. I think we can leave it there, actually, because that's just a perfect way to end it. In the sense, I loved what you said about I can challenge it and I will challenge it. And I think that last anecdote you shared with us, more than anything, it's a case of it. Thankfully, we're in different spaces now where it's more normal to be questioned, actually, and if anything, it should be an expectation. So that's I can challenge it and I will challenge it. Kerry, that was fabulous. Thank you. What I'm going to do, ladies, is I'm going to end this broadcast so we can take a break, and then we're going to come back on, hopefully live, because I've sent the stream. I can see Lisa. Hello, Lisa. I can see that some of us have joined the actual StreamYard, but I'm going to end it and see if I can try and broadcast it onto the book club live again. So is that okay with everybody? Fab. Okay. Thank you, Kerry. That was amazing.
Are we not live anymore?
1 minute.